Welcome to the We Watch This Movie podcast, where we sit down and we dissect the latest and the greatest in film. I am the Nolan fanboy, and a fitting time to be one. And I'm joined as always by the man with over 2,516 films on his watch list, Jackson, aka Marshall on Film. How you doing, mate?
Fantastic, Dan Allen movies. I've never been better. And guess what? We're back. Cinemas are back. Melbourne, Victoria, Australia has now recorded 28 days of no locally acquired coronavirus cases. And in fact, Dan Allen movies, today, since we are here recording, we have no active cases. Not only are we COVID-free, not only are we back recording after a break. Yes, we celebrated a birthday. No, we don't have any happy birthday music. But cinemas are back. And with that, what have we seen?
Jackson, it's been a long time coming. I think the first episode we ever did, we mentioned this movie. And after 38 mainline episodes and however many minis, we're finally here. We are reviewing
Freaky!
We're reviewing Tenet. And that is the last time, everybody, you're going to hear that cue. It is finally being retired today, once and for all. Tenet. You know, I bang on about C. Nolan every single episode to Jackson's despair. Today it ends, for a little bit anyway. And we put him on the shelf, and I think Matthew McConaughey's going to find that book later on in a movie we might cover.
Don't you get started. Don't you get started. Come on. I know this is your time. The connoisseur of all things Nolan, Dan Allen movies. You have been hanging out for this for what feels like years, decades. Who even really knows at this point? In fact, we are going to get into when this movie was due to be released.
Yep.
And not only is the wait over, but here at the podcast, you heard the theme at the top. Spooktober is over. Dan's Inferno is over. For our new listeners who are checking us out for the first time, what you can expect from us, especially now that cinemas are back, is all things contemporary cinema. If it's big, if it's at the movies, you bet we're going to chat about it. We're going to discuss it here. Dan,
what are some movies we're going to be discussing? We've got Mank coming up. We've got Wonder Woman. We've got plenty of big blockbuster films that we're going to be reviewing
we
right
are going to be talking about Freaky, which, spoiler alert, you and I have already seen and cannot wait to get stuck into. Maybe in our next full episode, coming soon to Netflix, or in fact, you know what? Released today, since we're recording, Hillbilly Elegy, the new film by Ron Howard, starring Amy Adams and Glenn Close. Whew, what a couple of knockout actors we have there. Look, enough beating around the bush. The people have been waiting so long. They're salivating. They're chomping at the bit. They're going to start inversing time on itself if we don't get right into it. What are they here for? Hit the TV spot.
This is where our worlds collide.
All I have for you is a word. It'll open the right doors, and some of the wrong ones too. Tenet.
You're not shooting the bullet.
Use it carefully.
You're catching it.
There are people in the future who need us. Who need Tenet.
Tenet. Wow, Jackson. Give us a synopsis for this one. I can't wait to hear this. How many pages have you got?
Oh my goodness. I don't know how I could ever possibly do this movie justice within 30 seconds in Dan Allen Movies' eyes.
It's not possible.
It's not possible.
It's necessary.
I swear I'm not a fanboy, okay? The lover of all things Lynch. I'm currently kitted out. I'm kitted out head to toe in American Psycho merchandise right now. I'm wearing so much Christian Bale. It should be illegal. All right,
how many times has Nolan and Bale worked together, hey? Anyway, go on.
I should have kept my mouth shut. I can't believe this. Forget about bingo cards. Just cash in all your chips.
Four
Okay, here
times.
goes.
4 times.
You had to. You had to.
The only other actor that's more than that is Michael Caine.
What
All
was
right.
that impression?
Michael Caine.
That sounded a bit more like a Ben Mendelsohn.
Yeah, that's Ben Mendelsohn. There he is. He within a Nolan film. The Dark Knight thriveth. All right, here we go.
So that's actually not too bad. Having survived a near-death experience and armed with only one word, Tenet. An unnamed CIA operative journeys through a twilight world of international espionage, tasked with fighting for the survival of all existence. Teamed alongside his cryptic new partner Neil, the protagonist follows a faint trail of clues that lead to a terrifying discovery of cutting-edge technology mastered by the villainous Russian oligarch Andrei Sator. It's a race against time to prevent an imminent attack from the future. How can two agents working alone avert the impending Armageddon in real time?
One man's probability of death is another man's probability for life. Jackson, I am going to cut your throat, Jackson, and feed your balls into your throat, and make you choke on your balls. Do you know what that does to a man, Jackson? Jackson, Tenet, the relief after finally watching this movie.
I'm going to stop you right there. I've just re-listened to our Borat 2, our Borat subsequent movie film episode, which, listeners, if you haven't checked that out, please do. Episode number 37 in the official chronology. You said this was your most hyped movie of all time, and it sounds like it's been a big cathartic relief for you to finally have seen it. Did Tenet live up to the hype?
It's a big question, and I tell you what, it was my most anticipated film of all time. At 26, moving on to 27 in a couple of weeks, years of age, this is the most hype I've ever had for a film. It was a long time coming. We saw glimpses of it, I reckon, a couple of years ago, or maybe a year ago, when they showed it on another... Was it a Warner Brothers film or something? They showed a little bit of footage.
It was on Birds of Prey way back when in Feb.
Birds of Prey, okay. Well, we saw some footage, and ever since then, I've just been so hyped to see it. And did it live up to this incredible hype that I put behind it? You know,
Impossible hype.
It was impossible hype, and would you believe it, Jackson? It exceeded the expectations.
Wow.
What a moment it was for me in that theater. Never have I had an experience like this, Jackson, where, you know, I've been thriving for the theater, and it is helped by COVID. Let's just put that out there. We hadn't been to the cinema.
Helped by COVID? What?
Well, I hadn't been to the cinema in so long as well, right? That's what I'm saying. So the last time we saw a movie was Fight Club, and that was in July. So it had been 4 or 5 months since I'd sat down.
Let me preface this. I had seen the personal history of
Okay,
David Copperfield in the cinemas, and I'd love to give my thoughts on that movie, but I did so for about 90 minutes, and sadly, no one will ever hear it.
Yeah, don't ever live it down. Yeah, David Copperfield episode will never, ever see the light of day, and that's good because I was shocking in that episode. Didn't have anything to say.
No wonder it was lost.
So going into the theater, man, just the excitement, we all had going in. Everyone was hyped to see the next Christopher Nolan film.
Everyone? What? Was it you and the 18 other people that were allowed into said theater?
Yeah, I mean, we went gold class, so we went luxury, and we sat down. We were all excited for the next Nolan film, all big fans, and just let the music play for 2.5 hours. Let the movie play, and just the feeling of this movie and the action and the set pieces and everything that was going on. It was all so much, but it was just exhilarating. Never have I experienced a movie like this in the theater. It was just unbelievable. Just having so much fun for 2.5 hours. And don't get me wrong, no, there's things that there's plenty of things that we can critique here, and we will go into. But just the experience as a whole, my God, it lived up to the expectations. I was taking in every moment, absolutely loving it. I was in my element. And I don't know how this man can do this. I told you off air, I said, look, Christopher Nolan, is there anyone like him at the moment? There isn't. But is there any director that could have pulled this movie off? And I don't think there is. When it comes to, you got to write this thing for a start. You got to direct it. The amount that's going on here, if you actually look at each set piece and some of the stuff that's going on, I just think it's incredible. Yes, he has a massive budget and a massive team behind him. That's part of the reason why no one else can probably do it. But I tell you what, this man's a genius. And we're going to look back, when we're 50 and 60, Jackson, and his career's over, we're going to look back and we're going to be thankful, because this guy is in his prime and he is pumping out some of the most original and biggest cinematic films we'll ever see in the theater. So we should just be thankful for that, and the ambition that he has as well. Like, this made 400 million, I think, in a COVID time. It's like in the top 3 for the year, and not many of the US folks went out to see it. I don't think it's any fault of the movie. Maybe if it was a Marvel film, it would have got a few more people through. But it's an original film. Like, he did 400 million. What other original film does those sort of numbers? That isn't a sequel or a big IP. Pretty much none. So he is the draw card now. He is the marketing tool. It's not because there's Robert Pattinson, arguably a big star. I wouldn't say he is a big star. After Batman, we'll come back later, because Twilight was 10 years ago, and he's done a lot of indie films since then. So I don't think he's a big star like a Leo. You got John David, you got Elizabeth Debicki, Kenneth Branagh. These aren't big Hollywood blockbuster stars that are going to draw a lot of people in, like a Tom Cruise or a Rock. It's people are coming in because of C. Nolan. Just the name. So, like I said, I just can't say enough things about him. We all know he's my favorite director, but it's for a reason. Just the cinematic moments that he creates. I always talk about moments in films. I think I said once, it takes 3 good moments to make a great film for me. 3 great moments to make a great film. But he seems to, for me anyway, personally, he seems to make a great moment every 10 minutes happen. When, things should be slowing down, or things should be, he somehow does it. I don't know how he does it. We'll go into it all, but what I can tell you is I had an absolute blast. This will be my favorite movie of the year by a long shot. And do I think it's a perfect film? Absolutely not. Will I be giving it the highest praise you can? Probably.
Are you done?
I'm not done, but I'm going to take a breather for you to come in. I tell you what, we could go on for hours. We'll try and keep it to the point and not ramble too much. Jackson.
We'll try. The key word here is try.
Try.
Okay.
We'll fail, but we'll try.
You've given us a lot to digest from the last couple
walk
minutes
me through your
gushing about this movie. Look, I want to read between the lines. I want to look for my own clues, my own symbols.
Jackson.
Just how to unlock this Rubik's Cube that you've thrown at me, Dan Allen Movies. Look for my own little palindrome. What sticks out amongst what you just said? Now, early on, you said it was the experience. It was everything going on. Dan, you used the words, it's all so much. And I believe that's the best way to describe this film. It is all so much going on, happening at once, be it the sound, the visuals, the action, the spectacle, okay? Mm-hmm. When we talk about pure cinema and a movie theater experience, there really isn't anything out there right now quite like a Christopher Nolan movie. Simple as that.
Exactly.
Whether you like some of these aspects or you don't like some of these aspects, whether they rub you the right way or the wrong way, however you want to see it, there really isn't any other director, I should say, out there making movies like he is. Did I find every aspect of what I just mentioned enjoyable? No. Do commonly how do I say this?
What?
Do some issues with the film hold this back from achieving that next tier? To me personally, yes. My complaints, which have been echoed pretty much everywhere since this first saw release back at the end of August and subsequently here in Australia around the beginning of September. Yes, Dan and I have only seen this in the last 2 weeks. Please bear with us. Do things like the sound mixing hold it back? Yeah, they do. On a first watch, it's really hard to take in all this dialogue, all this exposition, and to keep things following along. I'm going to be perfectly honest and put my hand up. I tried to bury my hand in the sand as much as possible going into this film, avoiding reviews and spoilers, even the runtime. I had no idea that this was going to be 2.5 hours long. And this is a lot of movie and a heck of a lot going on. So much noise, not just audibly, but visually as well, that it's exhausting. So to have to sit there for 2.5 hours trying to keep up, never quite understanding what's going on because you might have missed one key line of exposition, or it's moving so fast, throwing so much at you that it's impossible to comprehend, that doesn't necessarily help. Has Christopher Nolan been so afraid to produce a flop on this insane budget that he's now created a movie you have to watch twice? Yeah, I guess he has. But look, I want to talk to my first viewing experience, Dan. You've already said how much you love it and if it's likely going to get high marks. I'll talk to my first experience. You saw this in a luxury theatre. For our listeners here in Australia, particularly in Victoria, you're familiar with Gold Class at Village Cinemas. You know what it is. You'll head in, you'll have a drink, a bite to eat, you'll order food, you're basically waited on a hand and foot as you watch a movie, nice big comfy seats, not too many people in the theatre. I saw this in VMAX, which is a premium screening here in Victoria. Huge screen. We're talking like, you watch something in 70 millimeter, it's going to look fantastic and it's loud. We're talking sound that's going to rumble the entire theater and your seat. Even often watching something like a romantic comedy or your run-of-the-mill action film, it's very loud in VMAX and can sound a bit crappy, to be honest. The audio quality isn't great in VMAX because everything is amped up at the best of times. Now, take some of the poor sound mixing, amplify that by the VMAX speakers on my first viewing experience. I pretty much missed every line of dialogue in the first 45 minutes to an hour. I didn't catch anything. It wasn't until the second time I saw it that I was then able to really take in what was going on, who everything was, where all the pieces went. And that does hold the movie back for me. Watching it a first time, it is so much going on. Is this a common gripe across many of Nolan's films? Yeah. While it's hard to remember the first time I saw Inception, I believe we touched on this when we did our full episode. So listeners, please go check that out. When you watch Inception for the first time, it's very similar. A lot of these points are hard to grasp and grapple with, but the motto of don't try to understand it, feel it, kind of reigns more true and much simpler in something like Inception than it does here in Tenet. Because we've got not multiple dreams, but multiple timelines and ways of looking at time and going back and forth through time, it's tough. It's really hard to keep up. On the flip side, I want to quickly touch on some positives before we go back to yourself, Tan, because I know you've got so much to say about this movie. Did I enjoy the performances? Absolutely, for sure. For what they're given, I think everyone hits home. Particularly Elizabeth Debicki, who is easily Nolan's best female character, Nolan's best female protagonist, despite being trapped within the damsel in distress writing stereotype, I guess you could say. She makes a heck of a lot out of nothing. Kenneth Branagh, who I had no idea that he was in the film, what his role would be, was an absolute joy the first time he showed up. It felt like about 4 or 5 hours had passed during that first viewing experience. But seeing him, it was almost like the movie took a 180, and I was all the more happy for it. And Robert Pattinson, anyone who's listened to the podcast for more than a few episodes know how much I love this man. Give me the Pat, man. I'm so ready for this in 2021 or 22, whenever we are getting that new Batman movie. He's very charming. Again, like Elizabeth Debicki, makes a heck of a lot out of an underwritten role. So thumbs up to those guys. Having to watch a movie twice just to truly enjoy and understand it, or even 3 or 4 times, I don't know if that's really my cup of tea, especially when it's 2.5 hours and I honestly felt beaten and bruised and bloodied coming after it from the first watch.
Tell me, did you get the exhilarating feeling of this is a movie I'll never forget when watching it? Did you ever feel that? When the 747 is crashing in, when the music's blasting in the truck sequence, when Kenneth Branagh is talking in reverse and we see that the red and blue play out, when we see them on the yacht, the final battle scene, none of them gave you shivers.
You know what, Dan? I don't believe I got goosebumps once throughout this film because it's so loud and so dizzying, almost to the same point that a Michael Bay movie, maybe something like Transformers The Last Night we mentioned, almost to that point where it's so numbing that you can't take it fully in on an emotional level. It does leave you a little hollow and a little empty. That's another fault of some of these Nolan films, where something like Interstellar is probably too sentimental. Some of those earlier sequences in that film hit you emotionally, and you never quite reach those heights here in Tenet. That, though, is far more romantic in its view on its own narrative and what's going on. And I don't mean romantic in a sense of man loves woman. I just mean in, just some of the morals and the values that movie and that story particularly holds. Whereas here, because there's a lot of jargon and there's a lot of, in quotation marks, air quotes here on the video cast for anyone watching, a lot of movie dialogue and things you would never hear in real life, like some of how these people in these spy organizations speak and the fact that we've got protagonists and antagonists, you end up rolling your eyes a little bit. And on the first watch, when I watched this with some friends, we were kind of laughing between one another at just how preposterous it was. That doesn't mean it's a bad film. We're just acknowledging how silly and how ridiculous it is. That's okay. At the end of the day, Christopher Nolan has made what he believes is the ultimate and the next kind of James Bond film. What can a supervillain do after having tried to destroy a world every possible which way? Well, let's try and crush the world in on itself through time.
See, you sound like, everyone knows I love Nolan, but you sound like all the people that messaged me saying, Dan, Nolan's overrated. I don't know what you see in him. You actually sound a lot like them with the stuff that you're talking about here. I hear these words a lot: hollow, unwritten characters, no emotion, too loud. I always hear those for every Nolan film, pretty much, or the last few anyway. I always hear the same things. So that's just something to point out. I will ask you quickly before I go on and on. Do you think he's overrated? Be honest.
Yes, I believe he's overrated. But I've got a skewed view because who am I looking at through a webcam right now as we record episode 38 of the 39, I should say, of the We Watch This Movie podcast covering Tenet, but you, Dan Allen Movies. And you couldn't possibly be hyping this movie anymore and this director any more than you already do.
It's so compared to me,
okay. Pardon the joke, pardon the pun. It's, it's impossible. No, it's necessary. I mean, really, I can't have heard you talking this guy up anymore. So bear that in mind. Yeah. If I wasn't hearing so much about how good Nolan is and how good Tenet is, wow,
it's
how
almost
good Nolan is,
where...
how much you love him. It's ridiculous. It's basically self-parody how much you mentioned this guy. In fact, it is.
It is.
So, on one hand, do I think he's overrated? Yes. On the other, is the action in this movie rocking? Absolutely. Do I believe this movie has the best action that I've seen from Nolan? Bear in mind, I haven't seen Dunkirk, but from what I have watched, is this his best action? It probably is, yeah.
I go as far as to say this is some of the best action I've ever seen. Okay, now,
not my cup of tea. Not my cup of tea.
What I will say is that I have not seen it in IMAX. That'll be my third viewing. So I've seen the film twice. Okay. Another thing I'll say is I have not seen any reviews or any explanations or any in-depth talks about this movie or going in depth about the themes and what it all means, and those video essays. Not one. I look forward to going through every single one in the next coming few weeks, but I have not leading up because I didn't want my mind to be
Clouded.
Yeah. So when we
Dan, we had the same sentiment. You and I have each watched it twice, and we have done no research. This is pure, unadulterated, unfiltered Nolan chatter.
When I went into the Parasite review we did, I felt like some of the stuff I was saying, I'm like, I just heard that from someone else, and this isn't really what I feel 100%. Like, not everything, just a couple of moments there. So I didn't want any of that crap getting into the review. Now, you mentioned the sound design and the audio mixing. I can't argue with you. I can't sit here with a straight face and argue with you that it was hard to hear, okay? Everyone knows the mixing was a little bit off. Let's be honest. We have to be honest.
Let's be honest, and I want to raise this as well. I'm suffering from some early form of tinnitus. In fact, I believe that after having seen this movie twice in the cinemas, it's probably actually been potentially worsened in the short term. We're going to finish recording, and my left ear is going to be ringing with a whole bunch of noise for the rest of the night, and I'm going to wake up in the morning, and it's going to continue to ring. That's probably not a positive after watching a movie that I now have an earache.
Yeah, but I tell you what, when I went into the theater, and I knew this was going to happen, I said to the guy, because we didn't watch this, me and Jackson didn't actually watch this at the same time. Maybe the third time, Jackson, if you're keen. You're
going to have to twist my arm pretty hard.
I said to everyone, look, when the music is blaring super loud and you can't hear a thing that anyone says, I want you to turn to me and smile and just think that I'm absolutely loving this. Because for some reason, it's some of my favorite parts of the movies when the music is just blaring and things are happening. It's just exhilarating to me, and I don't know what it is about music and Nolan's films that hypes me up. Like the docking scene, it's the same thing. It's so obnoxiously loud, but I absolutely love it. Get goosebumps.
What scene?
Cooper, we're docking. Actually, hold on.
Endurance rotation is 67, 68 RPM.
Okay, get ready to match our span with the retro thrusters.
It's not possible.
No, it's necessary.
I love how I set you up for these, and you still don't hit them. 39 episodes in, I'm throwing them out.
You're throwing it out so easy.
You've just got a bite on there.
I literally, it's so easy. You couldn't make it any easier. Now, I think this film... Yeah, like I said, the mixing isn't quite right for everyone, but for me, I don't mind it. Okay, and would I like to hear a couple of things better? Yeah, like the yacht scene is obnoxious. It's crazy because not only is the music blaring, they're on a yacht, they're screaming, and there's like they're yelling, and there's also they're communicating over a radio with accents.
Sorry, not the yacht scene. You're talking about the catamaran.
The sailing scene. Sorry, yeah.
By the way, we want to point this out. Catamarans. Who thinks of catamarans? Like, has Christopher Nolan gone through the list of every possible James Bond movie and has said, I'm going to make a sci-fi, spy thriller action. Call it whatever genre you want. What has James Bond not engaged with one of the supervillains? Let's see. We've played chess. We've done a heck of a lot of skiing. Catamarans. No one's used catamarans before. Let's do it. And... I didn't mind the dialogue in that. You know what? I actually understand that. For me, I felt some of those earlier sequences when the protagonist, John David Washington, was
in the opera.
Well, no, the opera for sure. When John David Washington was kind of bouncing around from side character we'd see for 2 minutes, like Michael Caine, and then
you found that hard. That was perfectly normal for me.
I'll explain. And then the character Priya, particularly with Priya, where there's whispering and they're speaking a bit quieter, even though there wasn't all that much music happening, or especially with Neil there was, I just couldn't take it in. And because I'm missing these 1 to 2 lines of exposition, which kind of will bring this whole puzzle together, I'm thinking, who is this character? Can they be trusted? Did I miss something here? And you just feel like you're forever chasing the tails. I get it. That's kind of the point of the film. The protagonist never really knows what's going on by design. That's why he is, after all, the protagonist. He's out of his depth. He doesn't really know much about himself. I get what Nolan is going for by having a character who is, air quotes again, brought back from the dead. He's had his teeth smashed out, which means he's now got no dental records. This person technically doesn't exist. He's ready to be reborn. Come on, we get it, people. There's something going on here. But give us some kind of context. Make it easy to digest and understand. In 2.5 hours, you couldn't get this right.
Jackson, no matter how many critiques you have, you're not going to derail how much fun I had, just so you know.
And I don't mean to do that.
And you're not attempting to. Let's clarify right? that. Yeah, you're not attempting to. Priya's scenes were another one where, she had an accent which didn't help as well. So, and they were moving in, city streets and things like that. So, and there was background noise. So, one thing with Nolan films, he doesn't use ADR. He doesn't use additional voices. So, for you guys that don't know, when you can't hear some sound in a movie, they'll record it in a studio or record it again in an environment that's easier to hear if something's stuffed up during the filming of the film. So he's notorious for all this stuff, and I knew that going in, but to be honest, I took in about 85% of the dialogue, 90% in my first viewing, and I was able to follow along the entire story pretty well. I had some questions, but we have questions in every Nolan film. It's not an accessible film, and it does leave you confused. I understand that. I was even confused in some parts.
Is it his toughest?
I believe it's his toughest. Upon a second rewatch, though, upon a second watch, it all comes together beautifully. Like this film is meant to be rewatched, and this is a thing that you said before, where Nolan films are always has that. Inception was better on a rewatch. Some could argue Interstellar, all his films, Memento.
Is that a fault?
I don't think it's a fault. I've come to accept it in other films as well, that a rewatch can actually serve the film in a better light. Maybe not Midsummer for me, but other films, yes, have like Fight Club, for example. Upon that second rewatch we had, where I knew everything going in, it was just so much better for me personally, okay? And it was the same for Tenet. I was able to take in a lot more dialogue, a lot more what was going on. You could probably say it's a fault. I hear this a lot, you should be able to watch a film in its first viewing and not have to watch it again and get everything. I completely understand it. I actually shared that sentiment back, not long ago, but I've changed as I've, developed a love for film and realized that that's not always the case. Not always the case what the director was going for. And because, a lot of Nolan films have these hidden clues throughout, upon a rewatch, you get more satisfaction out of getting those little bits, and you feel smart. You feel like he's left that in there. Yeah, now that makes sense why Rob said this about the Coke, and all this stuff. It makes you feel smart, but it's actually just his writing. Anyway, I can't wait to see it in IMAX, but I don't think it was hollow, for one reason. Elizabeth Debicki's performance, she was a standout for me. She put on an emotional performance, a raw performance. You believed that she was his character for every second she was on the screen. And she's an Australian. I mean, they don't breed them like Australians. We just dominate wherever we go.
Who are some of your favourite Aussies?
You want me to tick off the bingo card? Joel Edgerton, Hugh Jackman, Ben Mendelsohn, just to name a few. But her performance was fantastic. It brought this emotion. John David Washington sort of plays the role of the protagonist. No, sort of plays the role of the audience here. He is an audience
avatar. Well. That's why he's called a protagonist. And often a protagonist in a movie will be the audience avatar. Sadly, he's not given much more beyond that. Dan, before we get into the murderer's row of actors on hand, you mentioned that it's not the most digestible film. And I've come up with a quiz for you, a game, an analogy. Yes, I want to play a game. No, there isn't a jigsaw cue. We didn't plan ahead of time. That'll do, though. Thank you. All right, let me set the scene. Here we go. Ready? Imagine Tarzan is found on some castaway island at the age of, let's say 28. You're tasked with explaining what movies are to him. What movie do you have Tarzan watch first? because it's definitely not Tenet.
No, it's not Tenet.
This is a serious
Definitely
question,
not.
by the way. I know this is a decent punchline, but
What movie?
honestly, yeah, what movie would you show someone who's never watched a movie in their life?
I would
And they've been exposed to no Western culture. This is literally, we've plucked them off an island. They've been living with apes.
I would show him something like Shawshank Redemption.
Oof, that's a big watch.
It's a big watch, but it's not hard to digest what's going on. I don't think it is. But if you want to go a bit more simpler, I would go like Terminator 2 or something like real classic. A real classic, yeah. Maybe, yeah, Terminator 2 or, E.T., one of the real classics, Jaws. I would show him one of those. Definitely wouldn't show him any Nolan films.
Choosing a classic seems like low-hanging fruit. Like, what is
would
it
you
about
choose?
what is it about these classic movies that you would show our Tarzan figure? I know
don't
I'm going off a huge tangent here, and I'm putting you on the spot. You're under the bus, but it's food for thought.
I mean, what is a digestible story versus a non-digestible? It's usually just the mechanics of the film, what's going on mechanically, isn't it? Usually.
It is, yeah. I gave this some thought, and I kind of landed that if you were going to show someone who had no idea about Western culture and no clue about what a movie was, I wanted something that was high concept, probably something like a comedy that was fairly lighthearted, maybe had some good morals, a decent story, and we had to have a leading man and a cast that was pretty much instantly likable. You know what I landed on? I'd probably have him watch Groundhog Day.
Yeah.
Because who doesn't love Bill Murray? It's high concept because we have a character who is forced to relive the same day over and over. He's a bit of a scumbag, and he's an obvious scumbag to begin with, but you can't help but love him because, again, it's Bill Murray. He's so sarcastic and funny. And yes, does it make sense? It doesn't make a heck of a lot of sense, well, to us, but especially not to someone who isn't aware what a movie is. But the existential theme and and what's going on philosophically of someone having to relive the same day over and over, it makes sense. That kind of resonates with everyone, and it would definitely resonate with someone who had just been plucked from the jungle, at least in my opinion.
What's your point?
How does this come back to Tenet, right? How does this come back to Tenet? Okay. I want to point out what's going on philosophically, at least in our opinion, having not done any essay work, any analysis outside of recording and setting up to chat between you and I. The idea of the protagonist, it's mentioned by Priya that, yes, John David Washington is a fresh face, again, air quotes, protagonist. There are many protagonists throughout this film. Everyone is at the heart and at the center of their own story. The protagonist, well, his is easy. His story is the story of the movie. He's going to set out to stop whatever evil plan is threatening the world, and then whatever happens after that, which we'll go into spoilers here in a bit, that's his story. Next up is Robert Pattinson as Neil. Well, he's basically a handler for the protagonist. He's the wingman. His story is going to be assisting him. We'll go into spoilers a little more into that because I know Dan's got some pretty full-on words to say. Elizabeth Debicki as Kat. Her story is moving out behind Sator's shadow. She's an estranged wife, and what she eventually does to him. She's got her own arc. Now, for Nolan, there are some people with their own arcs, and they are more well-developed, even though I said they were underwritten. I just disagree with some of their obvious and shallow characterizations. Without getting through every single character, also let's go into Sator's. His arc is also the plot of the movie, just like the protagonist. So that's where the idea of protagonists come from, and then antagonists as well. That's quite obvious. Other than that, what's kind of going on here?
It's a big
That's
question.
A question.
It's a big question. It's a big question, isn't it?
What is happening?
See,
what is happening?
To say what is happening, we're spoiling the movie. But I guess, guys, if you've come this far, I recommend it. Jackson recommends it.
Do I?
Bearing our final ratings, I think we recommend it just for the spectacle alone. All right. So I'm going to play the cue here, Jackson, if you don't mind, just to cover our asses for the next few bits. Spoiler alert.
Now, for those who have stuck around past the Groundhog Day talk and Tarzan and thinking, what the hell are these guys on about? Look, I don't really know. I don't really know either, but I want Dan to get stuck into it here. Start talking about some of these arcs and what I'm on about.
Well, first of all, okay, the algorithm, there are 9 pieces to this algorithm, okay? Sator, so let's go back a bit. 9 pieces to the algorithm that scientists created in the future, okay? They have put these pieces of the algorithm
my head.
back into the past and she killed herself, all right? You following along?
Who killed herself? The scientist from the future. So, like, how do you know this person killed themselves?
It's in some dialogue. You didn't miss it. It was too loud. This is so funny. So that I literally have to write this down because even I can't remember it. So this formula was created to invert time, as we know, right? Now, John David Washington actually created the organization of Tenet in the future, okay? It is the most convoluted story, but once you actually get your grips around it, you'll understand.
Keep going.
Maybe
we should have done this at the top.
Sator has found the 9 pieces of the algorithm, okay? And what happens is, if you're wondering why how does it connect to his watch? Well, it's like a Fitbit, I guess you could call it. It's pretty random, but essentially that's the ticker. That's the
it's a new Fitbit DEFCON 1.
Essentially, he's got pancreatic cancer, and he wants to take everyone with him, and he can pretty much blow up the world and blah blah blah. Right?
Sorry, is he going to blow it up or is he going to turn it in? Because he's going to invert the entire world, right?
Either or, right? However you want to see it, okay? He wants to trigger humanity's destruction, I call it, right? Now, when it comes to that yacht scene, okay, and the final battle, the Tenet organization, one's running in reverse, one's running in normal time, okay? It's so confusing, isn't it? Yeah, anyway.
Sorry, can we talk about this?
I love it.
Talk about this final
it.
battle.
Yeah.
How did Sator know that he's going to have to prepare for this final battle by having like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 dozen men just hanging out on the corner of some, like wherever they are in Siberia?
They're
just
defending.
Waiting.
They're defending. They're not.
How does he know that he's got to defend this?
Because he knows about the Tenet organization. He knows. Anyway.
How does he know?
He's being distracted,
if he's
right?
going to die.
He's being distracted by his wife, right? Now,
how does this guy let himself be distracted?
Listen. He knows. I think in the start of the film, you see Elizabeth Debicki's character, and she goes, "I'd love some freedom, I'd love to be that girl." And you see a quick glimpse of a girl jumping off the yacht, and she's like,
I did like that.
Yeah, and that was actually her, right? And she even mentions how he was gone for a few hours. Well, he wasn't gone, he was freaking dead because she killed him, right? So that all ties together as well. Her plan there is to distract him so they can get in and take the algorithm, right? They're trying to bury it. It all, the dead body is inverted, comes back, opens the door for them. That makes sense to you? Or not?
What are you talking about?
That didn't make sense to you, really? It couldn't be more clear for me. I'm not kidding. I'm trying to dumb it down as much as I can here, but
I'm going to stop you, buddy.
Okay.
What is the key to unlocking this movie's puzzle?
What is the key to unlocking this movie's puzzle? Didn't you ask me this off air?
I'm pretty sure I've asked you this every time we've talked about a confusing movie. Be it Mulholland Drive, way back when, be it Inception, and now here for Tenet. All right.
Well,
for me,
yeah. Go on.
What's hard?
No. Go on. We're not going to keep cutting ourselves off. Go.
We definitely are. So tick it off the bingo card. Okay. The key is Robert Pattinson as Neil. When we first see him, when the protagonist, because the audience avatar first meets him, Neil is already somewhere hazy in the journey of his life, in his own role as a protagonist in his own story. He's already been recruited into this organization set up by the protagonist in the future. And for an undisclosed amount of time, Neil must have been sitting in one of those shipping containers, traveling backwards.
He is a key in a lot of respects because
he's often changing. Do we ever really know where Neil is from, where he fits into the timeline?
I mean, if you get into the nitty-gritty, yeah, but he obviously at the end of the film is the end of his journey, but it's actually the start of their relationship because he's been inverted the whole time. Most people got that. I think it was pretty clear. But the theory that I have is that Neil is actually Elizabeth Debicki's son.
Oh my God, here we go.
You don't believe that, do you?
Explain it. Lay it on us.
Well, why don't you believe it, Jackson? Why you didn't pick up on these hints?
I don't think I need to say much more.
Anyway,
right,
Cat.
Lay the hints on us as if this movie wasn't preposterous enough with the last 10 minutes of whatever we've been talking about. I don't think anyone knows at this stage. Come on, give it a go.
Before I start, so I'm going to give you a few things here, guys. Okay, so as soon as first time I watched it, I had a suspicion that, is he him? But anyway, I'll watch it again and see if I can pick up on more clues, and I did. First one is, okay, the character's name is Neil. Now, Christopher Nolan, I will say one thing. I watched a lot of interviews with him leading up to this, press interviews. Pretty much every single one. Because he doesn't spoil it. He just goes on about it, the process. And one question was, is that his real name? Neil. And he said, no, it's not, right? Neil's name, and what's the son's name, Jackson? Max. Okay? Maximilian is the long version of Max. Okay, I'm not stretching here. I do not believe I'm stretching. Maximilian reversed. What are the first four letters? Neil. That is not a coincidence, Jackson. Okay, that is not a coincidence. You know Nolan. I know Nolan. Secondly, okay, yeah, you like that one, do you? So, if that doesn't confirm it, I'll give you a few more. Robert Pattinson dyed his hair, completely changed his hair for the film. What does his hair look like?
Christopher Nolan.
The sun. Yeah, I know. The sun. There's a second hint, right? Third hint. And this could be another theory. He continually goes on about this grandfather paradox. Or is that what he said? He calls it something like that.
Yeah, and Dan, what is the grandfather paradox for our listeners out there who may not be aware?
It's going back in time and killing your grandfather. Will you still be here? Is the gist of it? Is he Max's son? Is Robert Pattinson Max's son? And was he going back in time to kill Sator? There's another theory. It goes on, and I do not for 1 second believe these are all coincidences because
you are stretching so far.
I'm not stretching, Jackson.
I know
you do not get this much depth in another film.
Bullshit. In 39 episodes, I know I have come up with some stupid and wacky theories, and I'm going to mention it again. I can't believe it's still the only David Lynch movie we've spoken about, but Mulholland Drive. I think I was blowing everyone's minds, not just yours, well out of the water. Definitely mine. God, that was a movie and a half and still is. Okay, I get it. I've said some crazy stuff, but you are seriously pulling at hairs here, buddy.
I'm not. I'm not, Jackson. And when I say not all movies have this depth, that's a lie. They do, but these sort of films, these sort of blockbuster cinematic films, don't have this much depth.
A James Bond movie, essentially.
No. Yes. So, and you can't tell me all these pieces of the puzzle are being picked out by me, and I don't even know what other theories are out there. You can't tell me it's coincidence. You just can't tell me, Jackson. So I believe he's Neil, and the key reason is there's some dialogue there when they're on the boat, and Kat says, or is it the protagonist? He's like, "How do you know that, Neil? How do you know that it's that date? How would he know, Jackson?"
I don't know what you're referring to, so I can't comment. My God,
They
this is
say
what I mean. There's all these bits of dialogue that just get lost in the shuffle.
Okay, well that's a sound problem, and I don't believe it's a writing problem.
I think there's too much going on to have to pay attention to.
Well,
that's like a directing problem.
To me, that just comes back to you just didn't like what was going on.
I didn't get it.
No, you got it. You just didn't like what was happening. You weren't involved, because there was just as much happening in Mulholland Drive, and you're engaged in that. So it was literally just what was happening. Anyway, on the 14th, and he knew, and then the protagonist says, "How do you know that?" And it's just glanced off. There's another reason. How does he know? Because he's the son. He knows.
He knows that because Neil has been recruited into this organization in the future after these events have already happened. And the reason that the grandfather paradox is brought up is that how is Neil already recruited into an organization and has already saved the world from an event that he's going to be set up and planning and training for to actually save them from later on in the chronology compared to what we're watching? Like that's what the grandfather paradox is.
I want to see that final shot.
How does this organization called Tenet save the protagonist when he actually sets him up in the future?
You can't tell me the grandfather paradox. He's the son. Anyway, you're not going to convince me otherwise. Now, if we're watching Predestination, the Ethan Hawke film, which I don't know if you've seen that, but that's a real gem with the grandfather paradox. My goodness, what a movie that is. If we're watching that, I'd say, okay, yeah, fair play. But I just don't think it's the case here. You've gone a bridge too far. I could have sworn I saw that red ribbon on the kid's backpack at the end.
Oh,
don't quote me on it. I want to freeze the frame. When I get the DVD and send it to you, and if we get that red ribbon on that kid, you are going to apologize right
Can you explain how this corpse comes back to life with the red trinket?
Because he's inverted. He's going back, so he's being shot, but he's coming back. Do you understand? Anyway.
So how did he end up dead?
I'm not gonna because it's inverted. Anyway, I'm not going to explain the mechanics. If that's your problem, Jackson, then you are never going to like it, because at the end of the day, the mechanics of it is not what interests me, believe it or not. It's the spectacle of it all. I love a big blockbuster film, bigger than, that's why I go to the movies. I want to see a massive blockbuster film with a meaty story.
It's practical. It's not
practical,
CGI,
no CGI,
heavy,
exactly.
no green screen, especially the 747, which, if you weren't aware, Christopher Nolan bought just to crash, which is, I think that's amazing. Look, had you told me that it was a miniature moving over those cars and being crashed, I would have said, okay, no worries, but it's real, so I guess that's worth something.
And just all those scenes and the music blaring, that's enough for me to just absolutely love it in itself. I don't know how he does it. Every film that Nolan's involved with, the soundtrack is incredible. Like
is it your favorite score?
It's not my favorite score of his, but I tell you what, it's freaking good. It's the best score I've heard in the last 5 years. Seriously, it is an incredible score by Ludwig. He is really coming to his own. He's done Mandalorian. He worked with Ryan Coogler on a lot of films. He obviously did the Black Panther, one of his.
Trolls World Tour, of course.
Did he? He's really coming to his own. This was just an incredible soundtrack, and the way he came about some of the score, Jackson. Okay, like for instance, the Neil track that you were listening to just before. He actually got a guitar riff and then inverted that guitar riff, slowed it down. I mean, it just all ties together so well. You can shake your head all you want, Jackson, but it really gets me going, this stuff. Anyway, phenomenal stuff. The soundtrack, it pumping in the theater, and even a bit of Travis Scott, his futuristic sound, the plan. it was his idea to get him in. It wasn't Nolan's idea. Nolan probably doesn't even know who he is. If you don't know, Nolan,
Scott or John David Washington or
Nolan literally communicates via letters. So here's a story. Hugh Jackman, right?
who?
He did the opening for the Oscars. I think it was 2009. Was that The Wrestler when that was nominated? Because I remember with The Wrestler. I think it was 2009 or 10. He did the opening number for the Oscars. And Hugh Jackman said, look, I got so many people saying and texting me how incredible it was. It was their favorite. I was humbled. But my favorite piece of acknowledgement that I got was from Christopher Nolan. He sent me a letter saying how good it was. I mean, come on. You can't write this stuff.
It's so cringy.
He doesn't have an email. He doesn't have a phone number.
Who writes the most cringy dialogue to send someone a letter. I love it.
Is he up his own ass? Probably. I want him to go even further up because I absolutely love it. Anyway,
I think a more polite word is pretentious. And look, we have had a segment on this show before discussing is Christopher Nolan a pretentious director, and I don't think you're going to get much more hilarious than some of the
I bring that
dialogue sequences in this film.
Why I bring that up is he sent Travis Scott a letter of all people saying thank you for being a part of the film. It's so fun. 10 years later, he's still communicating. He's so old-fashioned. Just hilarious. And I could see him using the typewriter to write his script for Tenet. It's just so funny. Another thing I will say. Yeah.
Do you think more people would have gone to the theaters had they received personalized letters from Christopher Nolan?
He said he was happy with 400 million, and I tend to agree with him. You weren't going to get many from the US out. If they were in full force, it would have been about 550. It would have ended up at around, and then plus I reckon you get another 50 in from overseas. It ends up around 600. That's successful. Go on.
Oh, this has been a shit show. How much has this brought in?
I believe it's around 370, 380 at the moment. But
Dan Allen Movies, I'm glad you mentioned it, and I definitely didn't bring it up. Now, listeners, we have this having been produced on an estimated production budget of $205 million, which is huge. Dan said it earlier.
Estimated.
For an original picture.
It would have been 150. Anyway, I wasn't there, so I don't know.
For an original picture, it's a huge amount of money to spend. A massive risk for Warner Brothers, who are distributing it. So far, worldwide, in the box office, it has grossed $356.3 million. Projected losses are looking like up to $100 million, which is not great. It is.
What about the Blu-ray sales? They don't account for them.
It is 2020. Now, we're recording here late in November. Yes, we took a break here at the podcast. Sue us. It's our show, not yours. And in a few weeks' time, this will be hitting physical media for those that still buy them, DVD, Blu-ray, and who knows, it'll probably end up on demand, eventually on its way to streaming. Will this see a profit? Yeah, for sure. It just won't at the box office, which is truly sad. Dan's estimating 500, 600 million. I'm going to lean more towards 700, 800. Based on what we saw out of some of these Marvel movies and worldwide prior to COVID-19, this would have been successful, and it is a damn tragedy and such a sadness that it's not. Dan, you mentioned earlier as well, this is in the top 3 for 2020 highest grossing films. It's actually not. Right now, it's the 4th highest grossing film of 2020. Bad Boys for Life has outgrossed it, as have the Chinese films, The 800 and My People, My Homeland. But bear in mind, not one film in 2020 has crushed the $500 million mark worldwide.
It's still going as well, Jackson. Yeah, it's still opening in several places, and I think it'll end up being in the top 3 by the end of it.
Hey, this was meant to be the film to save cinemas. This was meant to be the first big Hollywood tentpole movie to reach cinemas, get people back in there, out of their homes, into the theaters, and it may have just killed them.
Well, places are locked. What do they expect?
Well, people don't want to go.
No, people don't want to go. It's not about the movie. It's about the world. At the end of the day, movies are cool, but when people's lives are at risk, I think people will go for the lives over a Nolan film. Anyway, he was pretty optimistic about it in an article I read, but you know, going back to the movie, Jackson, just
What movie?
I can't talk enough about the score. I just absolutely loved it, and it does propel the score higher for me. Now, Aaron Taylor was in the film, Aaron Taylor Johnson. I literally rolled the credits of the film. I turned to Tom and I said, "Was that Aaron Taylor Johnson?" It couldn't have been him. I couldn't believe his transformation since I last saw him in, I think it was Nocturnal Animals in 2014. I could be completely butchering that. 2016.
2016. I can't speak for having seen Aaron Taylor Johnson for, I don't know, years. Like, I'm talking back to 2012, maybe that Oliver Stone film Savages, which was pretty middling, pretty okay. He might have been in that. And you can't really forget him in Kick-Ass, but Kick-Ass is almost a decade and a half ago. I know there's at least one listener out there, Rochelle at the movies, is probably thinking, oh, goodness, Jackson, have you not seen more Aaron Taylor Johnson? But Dan, he was unrecognizable for me too.
He was unrecognizable, and he was pretty hard to understand. If anyone was hard to understand, he was probably one of the worst. Everything that Sator said, I could understand, but for some reason, Aaron, and his lines, he had a couple of key lines there, but he didn't have much. And you talk about people being underwritten. He was probably the most. Everyone else had their own arcs and were pretty fleshed out, I thought. I think that's I think that's a harsh criticism, actually.
You know what, though? He was coming into the movie for the third act, and despite not having much to work with, and this is pretty common amongst many of Nolan's movies, these character actors who show up in these minor roles still smash it out of the park. I thought Aaron Taylor Johnson was great.
Everyone smashed
and
it.
He showed a kind of depth that I hadn't really seen before, and I want to kind of echo what we might have said about Tom Hardy in Inception to Aaron Taylor Johnson in this. He really was that good, and I enjoyed seeing him there alongside Robert Pattinson and John David Washington heading into the end. It kind of did bring the movie up a little bit for this final action sequence. Plus, whatever character arc was going on written between the lines, yes, it wasn't quite there, again, underwritten, but you feel like that his character, which his name's Ives probably had his own protagonist arc going on, especially since he was one of the key members to get that algorithm, whatever the algorithm was. And flashback to 20 minutes ago, we still don't know what it is.
He still had his own arc, but probably a little bit lesser than the others, what I'm saying. Anyway, I think it's just a little bit of a harsh criticism for you, because I think everyone pretty much had an arc there and were pretty well written. I could tell you a lot about each of one of them, what their motives were and everything. So is it because you didn't get all the dialogue? Probably. And again, it comes back to that mixing, which is really unfortunate. I wish it was more clear and people could understand it more. And once again, it doesn't help when they've all got masks on half the time. They're all with different accents, multiple accents across different characters. Plus, the mixing has the music up on a higher threshold than some of the dialogue sometimes. So it all culminates in a really hard experience. And for the elderly people, goodness me, they're not going to like this film. And a lot of people I don't think are going to like this film. I'm going to go soon and look at all these reviews. But I don't expect, Jackson, we'll head into your segment. I do not expect these ratings to be very good.
Jackson's ratings.
IMDb, Rotten Tomatoes, audience score, and Letterboxd.
And why I say that is because it's just a very divisive film and there's a lot going on. Anyway, give us the ratings.
Rotten Tomatoes. Here at the top, since it's going to be divisive and Dan is going to have some interesting and polarizing opinions. On the tomato meter, at the time of recording, 71% of critics have given Tenet a positive score. This is one of the lower rated Christopher Nolan movies. Now, it's got an average rating of 6.90 out of 10, and in total, it's been collated from 278 critic reviews. I'm also going to give you the critics' consensus, according to Rotten Tomatoes. A visually dazzling puzzle for film lovers to unlock, Tenet serves up all the cerebral spectacle audiences expect from a Christopher Nolan production. On the flip side, the audience score over on Rotten Tomatoes, 76% of audiences have given this a score of 3.5 out of 5 or higher. It's an average rating of 3.97 out of 5 from 5,730 user ratings. 71%, 76%. Dan Allen Movies, what do you have to say?
You know, I expect this to be quite very, very low on Letterboxd, lots of 2s and 3s, and you've just, yeah, that's actually higher than I thought it would be, to be honest. But a lot of Nolan films, they start off soft, and then over time, they get more and more, they just go up. And I remember Interstellar, Jackson, particularly 2014, I looked at the IMDb rating. I reckon it was at a 6.9. Seriously. 6.9. If you look at it now, I think it's 8.6 with 1 million ratings. It's a classic in terms of space odyssey films, okay? Will this reach those heights? Probably not, but I think this will be very well looked after in the future, and it'll be a film we look back on and think, wow, he was ahead of his time. He was ambitious.
Sorry, he was ahead of his what?
He was ahead of his time. It was ambitious, and we love ambition, Jackson. We love it. And it's going to be looked upon favorably in the future. And when we eventually get onto Rotten Tomatoes, Jackson, you better believe we're giving this a fresh rating. No matter what you say, I'm bumping that thing up to a fresh rating. Now, one thing, you know, we can talk about this film all day. I don't want to make this episode go on too long, okay? All I'll say...
It's too late.
It's only an hour and 5, hour and 10. Only. You know, look, there's so many great scenes. The opening opera scene, incredible. 747 crashing, exhilarating. The trucks in the place scene, you know, how they're coming together. He's working his way across, and then you've got the flipping of the cars in reverse. It's just incredible to watch this stuff play out. Then you've got the red and blue room with Kenneth Branagh, with Sator. Every scene was entertaining. Every scene. It never slowed down. It never dragged on. It kept the pace. It was exhausting, but it was a fun and exhausting ride. And for 2.5 hours, has a movie ever flew by like this in your life? You can't deny, Jackson. This was the same runtime as Transformers. Which one felt like a longer film? This just flew by. It could have been 50 minutes. It could have been shorter than Host. I wouldn't have known. I loved it. Anyway, what I will say, Jackson, and this is going to shock some of you, I will not be giving the film a 10 out of 10. You just heard that, yeah. I won't be giving it a 10 for one specific reason, okay? I think I've said it before. A film... It can have the spectacle. It can have the cinematic prowess. It can have the action. It can have the dialogue, the story. But it's got to have the emotion. Got to have the emotion. Okay? Did this film have emotion? Yes, but it didn't have that 10 out of 10 emotion I'm looking for that I got from films like Lion and Interstellar. And they brought me to tears, those films, right? This film never, not even close. So for that reason, I can't give it that 10 out of 10 score that I would love to give it. And that's just my own personal rating system. So, and at the end of the day, numbers are numbers. Who gives a flying fuck what our numbers really are? It's about how we feel, how we perceive the movie, and if we enjoyed it. So, Jackson, we can go on all day, but we won't. I want you to give me your final rating.
Well, first, Dan Allen Movies, I'd like to have my segment back, please. How about we chat about the IMDb rating?
Do we really? Just get rid of it, Jackson. I want your final rating. We can go into it after.
IMDb, 7.8 out of 10 from 147,090 user ratings, which is an astonishing amount for a movie that's only been released in the last 3 months worldwide. On to Metacritic. So far, the Metascore of 69 from 47 critic reviews and a 7.4 user score from 702 ratings. Finally, of all the various film and cinephile social media platforms, easily the one that Dan Allen Movies is going to loathe the most when it comes to talking about a Christopher Nolan picture, and particularly talking about Race Car, aka Palindrome. Letterboxd has Tenet 3.6 out of 5. It's been logged by 155,957 members, rated by 127,942 of them, and liked by 45,908. That is the lay of the land, what the critics, the public, the cinephiles have thought. If Dan hasn't made his final rating more obvious, he's giving Tenet a 9 out of 10. For me, here, listeners, I came into this episode reflecting on my first viewing experience. It was significantly more negative than my second one. My second experience at the cinemas, a standard screening, was some of the power lost when I didn't have the huge giant screen. And, you know, I might do that IMAX viewing with you, wink, wink. Is some of the power lost if you don't have a big screen in front of you because it is a visually gorgeous film? Yes. However, the noise, a little bit quieter, being able to understand and comprehend and listen out for the dialogue and pick up on more of these clues and even take in the performances much better, feeling less exhausted, and the time really did flow for me. It's going to bump Tenet up to 8 out of 10 Sator squares. That's 9 and 8, a combined score of 17 out of 20. Round that one down, we get 8 out of 10 for Tenet. It is one of the better films we have seen for 2020. Is it the best we've seen this year at the cinemas? For sure.
It has made it to number 1 on my list for the year. No surprises, but we still haven't got that 10 out of 10 film. This was the closest. You know, if I was going in 0.5, this would be a 9.5. It is so close. So close to being a 10. I couldn't get it there because I thought, look, I never gave Inception the 10 that it deserved on our review. I think
you believe it deserved it?
I gave it a 9, and did I give it a 9? I can't even remember now.
You gave it a 9, Dan. We both gave it a 9.
Yeah. So what
and
I'm saying
we want to point out, Christopher Nolan still has the best rated movie on this podcast. And yes, some of the negative aspects, like John David Washington being a little dull and underutilized, as well as some of the other actors, they hold that back. The emotion, the gravitas, it's just not there. Back to you, my friend.
Yeah, so I gave it a 9, and I thought to myself, is Tenet better than Inception? I couldn't say it is. So for that reason, I couldn't give it a 10 alone. So, and plus the emotion. I mean, there was more emotion in Inception for me as well. So it comes in at a 9, but by God, was it a spectacle? Did I love it? Yes. Did it have some problems? Yes. Mechanically, emotionally, all the above, sound mixing. But it was just an experience I'll never forget in this theatre. And yeah, so guys, that is our Tenet review. That is Nolan. And I don't think we're going to give him a rest now. I'm going to try not to bring him up every single episode because it can wear thin.
You said that 10 episodes ago.
Look, from here on in, I'll promise to you guys, I will not bring up Nolan. I will not bring up The Lighthouse, and I will not bring up Midsummer again for at least 2 episodes. For at least 2 episodes. For at least till, I'm not going to give you a number, but I'm not going to bring them up anymore, right? That's that. So Tenet is done. Oh, what a weight off my shoulders that was, hey? But boy, was it fun. Jeez. I'm glad you gave it an 8 because I was feeling there was going to be a 7 there, and I was about to walk out the door.
I admitted I admitted it was a 7, but I did have a good time watching it second. So
I was about to call up Lucky Boy.
That quote, I'll see you on the next pass. That's how I felt.
Hey, if there was ever a film that was you and me, I'm Aaron Taylor, big buff, strong man, and you're Robert with 100 scarves. What do you reckon? Eh? Who's Denzel?
Yeah,
Who's Denzel's son?
I'll get the vodka tonic. He'll have the Diet Coke.
For some reason, talking to Jackson, I called John David Washington. I called him Denzel Washington's son. It was so disrespectful, but it was funny. I don't know. Anyway, oh, there's so much more we could have talked about, but I feel like we don't want to beat around the bush anymore. We want to try and give you guys insightful conversations that we try not to drag on too much and repeat ourselves. And
even though we do all episode long, and we definitely have today.
You reckon we have repeated us? I don't think we have. I think we've
I
been
think
good.
we might be doing it right now.
I think we've been pretty good, but I remember back to the Inception episode. I feel like there was some real. Anyway, look.
Well, when are our inverse selves going to come in here and start taking over this podcast for us?
9 out of 10. Yeah.
Dan, for our listeners, can you give us that Sator impression? That one I was begging you up there. I want to hear this.
We'll finish off with a Sator impression, but can we get one from you or not?
You're not going to get one from me,
Okay.
but listeners, I want to update you. On our most recent episode covering the Cleansing Hour, we brought the movie challenge back. Yes, here in 2020, in the last 30 days, we saw the untimely passing of Sean Connery. Now, I challenged Dan to watch Highlander. He challenged me to watch Murder on the Orient Express. Since we are back in cinemas, we called an audible. We are going to be reviewing those films on our next episode. And, drum roll please, our next episode, the brand new horror comedy from Blumhouse with Vince Vaughn, Freaky.
That'll be a good one to cover.
It will be a good one. Can we get the closing music? I'll give us this final roll, and Dan will.
You've got to ask for the closing music now. That's what this show's come to, hey? You've got to ask for it. Jackson,
with DJ
give me
Dan
the closing
Movies
music, and then send it off to me for the final quote.
Listeners, thank you so much for tuning in to episode number 39 of the We Watch This Movie podcast. Now, if you've liked what you heard, and we really hope you have, we would appreciate a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. If you, like Dan Allen Movies, have just got that brand new iPhone, head on over there, 5 stars, let us know what you love, and maybe even suggest a film you might hear on an upcoming episode or mini-sode. Follow us at We Watch This Podcast. Give us a like on Instagram. Give us a DM on Twitter. Even check us out on TikTok, maybe on Facebook too. He is at Dan Allen Movies. Go check out his reviews. I am at Marshall on Film. Go engage in conversation with me. Again, this is the We Watch This Movie podcast. We are out of time. And to close, we have special guest, Sir Kenneth Branagh, Mr. Andre Sator.
I can't believe we got this. Can't believe we got Kenneth Branagh on the show. Here he is. Kenneth, take it away, mate.
You do not negotiate with a tiger. You admire tiger until it turns on you. And you feel its true fucking nature! You bitch, you whore! Ah!